Hey guys, tonight we're brushing off the frost and ducking beneath the smoke-stained rooftops of 1950s Moscow, slipping quietly into a story soaked in oil bureaucracy and the click-clack of 1,000 mechanical arms. You're not famous, not powerful, and certainly not wealthy. You're one worker in an ocean of workers, just a name on a clipboard, just a pair of hands at a typewriter factory. And today is Tuesday. You wake to the familiar groan of your radiator if it works, which is never guaranteed. The light slipping through the single window of your fifth-floor walk-up is colorless, as if even daylight is rationed now. You hear the faint clatter of feet in the hallway and the distant roar of a tramcar below. You stretch under a wool blanket that's somehow always damp around the edges. The mattress groans, so does your spine. The air inside your room is warm in a way that suggests pipes are barely doing their job, not out of kindness but habit. You swing your legs over the side and touch your toes to the floorboards, cold as betrayal. This is the Soviet morning ritual, not triumphant, just grimly loyal. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is. Maybe we'll build a little sleep community across time zones. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your first act of the day is boiling water, and your kitchen is more like a corridor that ends in a sink and a hot plate. You share it with neighbors. The stove smells like cabbage, always cabbage. You light the burner with a match that's too short and it singes your thumbnail. A familiar battle. You win. While the kettle rattles its way toward boiling, you pull on your clothes from yesterday. Not because you're lazy, but because they're your only decent pair. Heavy wool trousers, a shapeless cotton shirt, a cardigan with a hole at the elbow you pretend not to notice. The coat hangs by the door like a warning. Thick brown, stiff, and several shades of formerly beige. It smells like last winter in every tram you've ever ridden. You eat slowly a slice of black bread with a film of margarine, a cup of tea brewed from the same leaves you used yesterday and the day before. If you squint, you can almost remember the taste of lemon. No eggs, not this week. You do have one sugar cube. You break it in half, luxury. Outside the window, the snow isn't falling. It's just there, already committed, thick on the ground. It swallows sound. It swallows your motivation. But the factory whistle will blow soon. It always does. You check your watch, it ticks 1 second slower than it should. You check your ID pass, still pinned inside your coat, next to the pocket where you keep hope and lint. Then finally, you lace up your boots. 2 minutes. Every morning. You wrestle them on like stubborn livestock. One of the laces has been tied back together with wire. Soviet improvisation. The other has no lace at all. You've been using a shoelace from a pair of skates you no longer own. Still, you stand up straight. You're ready. The stairwell smells of smoke and wet stone. Your neighbor, the one who always burns potatoes, has already left. You hear the ghost of her cough echoing down the pipes. At the ground floor, the mailboxes sit crooked on the wall. You check yours even though no one writes you letters. Of course it's empty. Except for one flyer about coal storage and a handwritten note that says, "Comrade tenants, please refrain from urinating in the stairwell." Underlined 3 times. You step outside. The city wraps itself around you in quiet resignation. The sky flat steel, the air onion thick, the snow trampled into submission. Your building is one of many, all pressed together like frowning siblings, a Soviet chorus of cold concrete and fading paint. You walk carefully. The streets are slick with a layer of ice so thin it feels philosophical, present only when you forget it's there. The tram stop is 5 minutes away, 10 if the snow fights back. You nod to a man carrying a large box labeled spare parts. He nods back like you both just shared a secret. Maybe you did. Maybe the secret is simply we're still here. You pass a group of school children. Their coats are too thin, their cheeks too red. One throws a snowball. The others scatter like pigeons. The snowball hits a poster of Lenin. No one says a word. Further down, an old woman is selling sunflower seeds from a jar. She doesn't call out, just sits watching the world go by like she's studying for a test she never signed up for. You hear the whistle in the distance, high, shrill like a warning. It's time. You adjust your scarf, pull your coat tighter, and head for plant No. 243. You will be on time. You are always on time. Because here being late is not just frowned upon, it's recorded. You push through the factory gates just as the second whistle sounds. The guard gives you a quick glance but no words. You flash your ID. And just like that, another day begins. Same as yesterday, same as tomorrow. 1,000 keys to oil, 1,000 machines to check, 1,000 silent agreements to survive quietly. You're through the gate now. Past the smoking guards and the unlit propaganda board showing the latest worker of the week whose face is always cropped a little too tightly, as if the photographer didn't trust the man's ears. Plant No. 243 stands in front of you like a tired bear, wide lumbering soot-streaked. Its facade is decorated with broken promises and thin icicles. A red banner sags overhead declaring productivity is patriotism. The wind flaps it like it disagrees. You step into the entry corridor and wipe your boots on a doormat that's mostly symbolic. The walls are tiled halfway up in a yellow that was probably once cheerful but now looks like old teeth. To your left, the locker hall. To your right, the production floor closed off by a frosted glass door that groans when it opens, as if the factory itself sighs every time someone enters. You head for the locker hall first. Your locker is number 38. It has a dent in the middle shaped suspiciously like someone's head, possibly yours from last October. You open it. Inside your apron, your badge, your gray hat with a red star that used to sparkle until it started absorbing factory dust like a sponge. You change in silence. So does everyone else. The rustle of fabric, the occasional throat clear, the metallic clink of belt buckles. There's no need for conversation. You've all been doing this for years. Centuries, if you go by how it feels. Clock in is at 6:58. You always get there at 6:54. Enough time to look efficient, not enough to seem desperate. You pass the time clock. Stamp your card. The machine makes a sound like a resigned sneeze. Time officially belongs to the state now. You walk onto the production floor. Rows upon rows of metal tables stretch into the haze. Overhead, the lamps buzz softly, casting a yellowish light that makes everything look a little jaundiced. The air smells like oil ink and whatever soup was burned in the break room microwave last week. Each station is marked with a number and a clipboard. Yours is Station 7. The clipboard says, today's task, type bar alignment. Model ORL 4, 128 units minimum. You nod at no one in particular and slip on your work gloves, thin, cotton fingerless, because you still need to feel the parts no matter how greasy they get. Your work table is exactly the same as yesterday, and the day before. It even creaks in the same spot when you lean on it. The first typewriter sits before you like a sullen child. The type bars are slightly misaligned. If left unchecked, they'll strike the paper crooked or worse, jam the whole machine. Your job? Realign each bar by hand using the tiny flathead screwdriver and your calibrated indifference. You begin, click, adjust, tap, click again. You check the spacing with a thin ruler that has no numbers, only scratches and 2 teeth marks from when Pavel bit it in frustration last year. Ah, yes, Pavel. He's at Station 9 now, 2 rows down. You can see the curve of his back as he hunches over a carriage rail. He hasn't noticed you yet. That's fine. Next to you is Galina. She's always first to arrive and always last to speak. Today she offers a nod, maybe a smirk. It's hard to tell under the factory lighting where facial expressions go to die. She's wearing a brooch that looks like a tulip. Definitely not regulation. You want to ask her where she got it, but the floor manager just walked by. The floor manager, Comrade Makarov. Tall, thin, mustache so sharp it might be classified as a weapon. He carries a clipboard he never writes on, but he inspects everything like he has X-ray vision and a direct phone line to the ministry. He passes you, stops, looks at your clipboard, taps it with his pen. 128 units. No errors. You nod. He grunts, moves on. Success. For now. A bell rings at 10:00 a.m. morning break. You don't move. You've learned best tea is poured second. First is just hot water with a hint of desperation. You wait 2 minutes, then head to the canteen. The canteen smells like cabbage, and possibly soap. The combination is unholy. You get your tin cup of tea and your dry biscuit. Sometimes there's jam. Today, no jam. You sit beside Galina. She sips her tea like it might betray her. You try to make small talk. How many today? She shrugs. Finished 42. 5 rejects. You wince. 5 is risky. Too many rejected parts can lead to a report. A conversation. A warning. She sips again. Doesn't elaborate. You say nothing more. On the wall behind you, a poster shows a heroic worker holding a typewriter like a rifle. The caption reads, "Each machine a bullet for truth." You wonder if truth ever jammed mid-sentence. Break ends. You return to your station. You inspect your next machine. This one has a bent U. Of course it does. You whisper, "You again." Click, adjust, tap. The sound of synchronized repair rises around you, an orchestra of function, a ballet of precision, performed entirely by people who are too cold, too tired, and too quiet. As you work, your fingers go numb. The gloves help, but not much. You know this rhythm by heart now. So well, in fact, that sometimes your mind wanders and your hands keep going. Like today. You think of last week's movie night at the community hall. The film was about a cosmonaut and his devoted fiancée. You remember more about the fiancée's shoes than the plot. You wanted those shoes. They had laces, real laces. You finished the 20th typewriter just before noon. Only 108 more to go. You write your initials on the tag. Place it on the done pile. Begin again. You never stop to wonder if any of these machines will end up in a school, a government office, or a poet's hands. You only wonder if you'll finish before inspection. The second shift bell clangs, not rings, not chimes, but clangs like someone dropped a wrench down a metal stairwell. That's your cue. Back straight. Fingers flexed. Eyes scanning the pile of half-assembled machines waiting for your attention like neglected houseplants. You roll your neck once, twice, each vertebra protesting, and dive back into the mechanical maze of levers, springs, and arms. You're working on a Model RL4 now. Sturdy, ugly, reliable, like most things here. The margin release lever's catching again. You tap it twice with the wooden handle of your screwdriver and whisper, "Be nice." It listens. For now. Your benchmate Galina is muttering to herself again. Her lips move like she's reciting something, but her voice never escapes the margin of audibility. You suspect it's poetry, her secret pastime. She claims to hate poems, but you once saw her eyes soften when someone mentioned Pasternak. And her fingers twitch in rhythm sometimes like they're keeping time with lines she knows by heart. You say nothing. It's understood. Some things in the factory are sacred. Pavel, 2 stations over, lets out a soft groan. His ribbon spool slipped again. You glance over. He's got grease on his forehead and a look that suggests he's been fantasizing about strangling an entire machine. You catch his eye. He mouths the word soup. You respond silently. Bread. You both nod. This is how friendships work here, entire conversations conducted through mime and facial twitch. The foreman makes another round his shoes, squeaking rhythmically like a cartoon villain. Comrade Makarov. He passes Pavel without pause, glances at Galina's station, then stops beside yours. He says nothing, just reaches out, lifts a finished unit, and tests the carriage return. It glides smoothly. You exhale. He doesn't notice. He taps the clipboard beside your station with 2 fingers, then moves on. Tap, tap. Approval in Morse code. You allow yourself a small moment of pride, which you immediately extinguish for safety. Pride is suspicious, pride is noisy, and nothing noisy survives long in plant 243. It's snowing again outside. You know this because the draft at your feet has turned sharper, and the light through the high-set factory windows has that dim blur the way snow tries to erase the world rather than decorate it. You wonder if the city even notices the snow anymore, or if it's just another layer of silence piling up. Your hands are starting to ache now, not in a dramatic, tragic kind of way, just the persistent, dull rhythm of muscles used too long without thanks. Your thumbs are black with ink. There's grease under your nails that hasn't gone away since last Tuesday, possibly earlier. You inspect the next unit. Someone's misaligned the key arms completely. They rise like crooked teeth. You sigh. It's going to be one of those models. You begin realigning the keys, slowly, precisely. Your motions feel like a kind of prayer if prayer involved pliers and muttered profanity. This is when the thought hits you. How many letters will this machine write? You imagine it in an office somewhere hammering out party reports, or maybe a love letter between two cautious people, or a confession, or a joke, or a complaint that will be filed, stamped, and ignored. These machines, ugly clunky, will survive longer than any of you. Some might outlive the system itself. Historians still argue whether the Soviet typewriter should be seen as a tool of control or liberation. You've never had that luxury. To you, it's just your daily opponent. Across the room, someone curses quietly. The sound is sharp enough to earn a few glances, but soft enough to avoid attention. Turns out Galina spilled a jar of springs. Dozens of tiny coils roll across the floor like mechanical ants. You kneel to help her pick them up. For one strange second, you're both on the ground, your hands brushing springs and each other's fingers, and you think, what would this look like in a romance novel? Probably more glamorous. Less grease. Better lighting. You don't speak, neither does she. But she smiles barely and slips you one of the springs. "Keep it," she whispers. "Good luck, charm." You raise an eyebrow. Or you know a weapon, if it comes to it. By now you're halfway through your quota. Not bad. Not impressive. Just safe. Your stomach growls. The biscuit you had earlier dissolved in your mouth like disappointment. You consider sneaking another sip of tea, but the samovar's too far, and Makarov's back on the prowl. So instead you stretch your fingers and hum quietly under your breath. It's a lullaby your grandmother used to sing. You don't know the words anymore, just the melody. It helps. The lights overhead flicker once, then stabilize. You're not sure if it was a voltage issue or a warning from God. Either way, you keep working. The bell for afternoon break rings. You don't move. You have momentum now. Breaking it would feel like betrayal. Galina leaves her station, nods at you once, then disappears toward the canteen. Pavel doesn't move either. You two are synced in some unspoken game of factory chicken, who will crack and rest first. You win. Barely. There's a story Galina told once very quietly about her cousin in Leningrad who worked in a perfume factory. The cousin said the air always smelled like roses, but no one there could afford soap. You think of that now. This factory doesn't smell like roses, it smells like machine breath and onion soup. But at least you can tell yourself you're building something. Sort of. You're part of the mechanism that types reports, orders, novels, arguments, confessions. Letters to no one. Letters to everyone. That counts for something. Maybe. Maybe not. The next typewriter clicks into place. You roll your neck, wipe your hands on a cloth that hasn't been clean in months, and begin again. Click, adjust, tap. It's 2:47 p.m., only 4 hours to go. But who's counting? At precisely 3:00 p.m., the factory shifts gears not audibly but emotionally. The air grows heavier as if everyone suddenly remembered how far they are from the weekend and how long the line outside the store will be for meat that probably won't be there. You adjust your posture, which has been steadily collapsing like a folding chair. The factory chair you sit on is wooden square and universally despised. Its back support is a myth. A colleague once tried to stuff rags into his for padding. The next day the rags disappeared and he got a polite reminder from the union modifications suggest dissatisfaction. He never mentioned his back again. You glance up toward the big wall clock. It ticks with the urgency of a librarian's sigh. The second hand drags like it's trudging through molasses. Time doesn't pass here. It loiters. You turn back to your next machine, model ORL4 again. Of course, it's all model ORL4 now. One would think the Soviets had a deep ideological commitment to one kind of typewriter, and maybe they do. Uniformity, after all, is half the point. You pick up your screwdriver, tap the space bar, it sticks. You roll your eyes. Every machine seems to develop a personality. This one is clearly passive-aggressive. By now your hands are dirty in the way that soap can't fix. Ink has made a home in the lines of your palm. Oil has become part of your cuticles. You smell like metal filings and exhaustion. There's a sort of dignity in it if you squint. You notice a slight tremor in your fingers when you hold the adjustment spring. Not from fear, not from cold, but from repetition. Your body is telling you something. You politely decline to hear it. A sudden loud clunk echoes from across the room. Everyone freezes. It came from line 4, the assembly row notorious for its eccentricities and eternal paper jams. You stand up halfway to see what's going on. A few heads are turned. Galina raises an eyebrow from her station. Pavel is already on his feet, peering toward the noise. A supervisor walks briskly toward the commotion. His shoes clap against the floor like punctuation marks. You all wait. Then nothing. The noise isn't repeated. No alarm is raised. No names are called. Just silence. And then, like ants after a brief earthquake, everyone quietly resumes their work. You return to your seat, heart still ticking faster than the wall clock. It's strange how here silence can be more ominous than shouting. Historians still argue whether Soviet factories were places of unity or places of collective paranoia. In your experience, it's not even a choice. It's both, depending on who's watching. You pick up the next part only to find a screw slightly shaved at the edge. It won't fit. Standard quality control would toss it. But standard isn't always practical. You dig into your drawer for the file. Gently shave the screw back into shape. Whisper to it. You're good enough for the state comrade. It doesn't answer, but it fits now. You write your initials on the tag. That's 76 completed. You're inching toward the quota. The factory's radio kicks on loud enough to remind you someone somewhere controls the volume. A song plays, an old marching tune repurposed into a patriotic jingle. Something about progress and the will of the people. You hum along not out of affection but muscle memory. Everyone hums, quietly, obediently. Galina hums too, except she shifts the melody, makes it minor, softer, sadder. You catch her eye and she winks. That tiny act of musical rebellion makes your chest warm briefly. Like slipping sugar into tea no one saw you brew. The day drags on and the machines blur together. There's always something, an uneven key arm, a crooked ribbon guide, a missing washer that you swear was there 2 seconds ago. Still you work, because if you stop, you think. And if you think, you risk remembering, or worse, wanting. You glance again at Pavel. He's working slower now, carefully. Intentionally, you know why. He's getting close to the soft limit, 120 machines give or take. Beyond that, management starts to ask why you're working too fast. Speed is suspicious. Too much productivity suggests ambition, or maybe you're cheating. Either way, it means attention, and attention here is never a gift. So Pavel wipes his forehead with unnecessary slowness, sips tea, pretends to remeasure a spring that clearly fits. You admire his technique. Suddenly you feel a presence behind you. Not Makarov this time. Someone else. You don't turn around at first, but you see Galina's eyes flick upward, then quickly back down. That means trouble. You slowly glance over your shoulder. A man in a dark gray coat stands near the doorway. Not in uniform, but definitely official. You know the type. Eyes like lockpicks. Shoes polished too well for a real worker. He's not talking, just watching. You immediately become aware of every breath you're taking, every movement of your hands, every smudge on your apron. The room has gone silent again. Even the humming stops. He doesn't speak, just watches. Then just as suddenly he turns and leaves. No words, no clipboard. Just absence. And somehow that's worse. You let out a breath you hadn't realized you were holding. Galina leans over and whispers, "Did you comb your hair this morning?" You raise an eyebrow. He didn't even flinch. That's either very good or very bad. You both chuckle, softly, just enough to release some pressure. Then you get back to work. Because that's what you do. Because that's what keeps you invisible. You hit 101 by 4:50 p.m., only 27 more. The clock is slow. The work is slower. Your stomach is a yawning mouth begging for boiled potatoes. But you press on. Click. Adjust. Tap. The factory isn't just where you work. It's where you hide. The bell that marks the last break of the day sounds less like a bell now and more like someone dropped a spoon down a stairwell made of regret. You lean back slightly, stretch your spine with a muted wince, and set down your tools. It's 5:30 p.m., and your fingers feel like they've been operating underwater all day. Some of your coworkers shuffle toward the canteen. Not you. Not yet. You've learned the hard way that the first few minutes after break begins are nothing but elbows and complaints. You wait. Let the crowd thin. And while you wait, you glance at your hands. They look older than the rest of you, wrinkled, rough, speckled with permanent ink stains. The nails are uneven, the knuckles red and stiff. You flex them once, twice. They creak a little like tiny wooden doors that have been opened too many times. Funny how these same hands once played the accordion at your cousin's wedding. Now they tighten type bars. It's fine. It's all part of the plan. Whose plan? Don't ask. That's not part of the script. When you finally make it to the canteen, the air hits you like a cabbage-flavored ghost. Same soup smell, same flickering light, same lady behind the counter with the same expression somewhere between grim duty and resigned endurance. Today's menu: boiled potatoes again, and a sausage that's been boiled so long it looks like it's questioning its purpose. You nod politely, take your tray and sit in your usual seat, third table from the window, second chair in. Pavel joins you, his tray carrying identical contents. You joke sometimes that the only mystery in Soviet cuisine is which part of the pig is still emotionally intact. You eat in silence for a while, listening to the loudspeaker crackle to life. An old march plays again, probably the same one from last Tuesday, or every Tuesday. Galina arrives late. She moves quickly, eyes darting, mouth tight. She doesn't sit down right away. Instead, she pulls something from her coat pocket, a small folded scrap of yellowing paper, and slips it into your palm like she's passing contraband. "Don't read it here," she whispers, and then louder, "Pass the salt." You nod past the empty salt shaker and try not to look surprised. But your palm is burning now. Not literally, but in the way something private does when it's being concealed in public. You slip the paper into your inner coat pocket. You don't ask questions. That's lesson number 1 in the factory. Curiosity gets reassigned. After lunch, the shift resumes. You move slower now. Not from laziness, but calculation. The closer it gets to quitting time, the more you must appear industrious without actually finishing too early. It's a delicate balance, like pretending to swim in a pond without creating ripples. You polish a key plate unnecessarily. Rethread a ribbon guide that's perfectly fine. Then you move on to the final assembly. 1 more hour. 1 more hour. You tell yourself this like a prayer. At 6:17, disaster strikes. A loud clank from line 4 again, then silence, then whispers. You don't need to see it to know paper jam. Line 4 is cursed. It always jams. No one knows why. Probably the floor is uneven, or the machines themselves have formed a secret union and are staging micro-sabotages. You hear the assembly line grind to a halt. The supervisor rushes over. Everyone freezes. It's like watching a flock of pigeons stiffen before taking flight. You hold your breath. So does Galina. One woman speaks up. It's the feeder arm. It keeps catching. Makarov, the floor manager, arrives seconds later. He's puffing slightly, though he pretends not to. He examines the machine, runs his finger along the feeder nods once, then glares at the technician like he's personally offended. "I want this corrected in 5 minutes," he says, not loud but sharp. The woman nods rapidly. Someone offers to help. You pretend to be engrossed in your own unit. Within moments, the line restarts. Crisis narrowly avoided, but the air has changed. You can feel it. You return to your own work, but your focus is rattled. You keep thinking of the paper in your coat, the one Galina gave you. You shouldn't read it, you know that. But curiosity is a stubborn roommate. At 6:50 p.m., with 10 minutes left, you take a small risk. You move toward the storeroom, claiming you need a replacement spring. Once inside the shadowed shelves of parts and cardboard boxes, you carefully unfold the paper. It's a poem, in her handwriting. Not just any poem, a new one. It speaks of snow falling on silent mouths, of machines whispering the dreams of their makers, of names scratched into lockers then forgotten. It's beautiful. It's dangerous. You fold it again tighter this time and tuck it into your lunch tin where no one ever looks, not even you if you can help it. The bell rings. Day over. But the day never really ends. It just changes scenery. You line up with the others to clock out. The line moves like syrup. No one rushes. Rushing implies eagerness to leave, which implies discontent. You mustn't appear too eager to leave your glorious assignment. You swipe your time card again. Another mechanical sneeze. You collect your coat from the locker, slip it on like armor. Out the door you go, boots crunching into evening snow. Outside, the street lamps flicker to life with all the enthusiasm of someone waking up from a nap they didn't enjoy. You can see your breath again. The cold is back. It never left. It just stepped out for a smoke. Pavel walks beside you in silence. You pass a kiosk with no newspapers left. A dog barks somewhere distant, possibly protesting the cold or life in general. At the tram stop, you and Pavel part ways. "Tomorrow," he says. You nod. "Always tomorrow. Never see you later, because later isn't promised here." But tomorrow is contractual. You climb onto the tram. The door hisses closed behind you like a sigh. You hang on to the overhead rail as the tram lurches forward through a city that never quite wakes up and never quite falls asleep. You rest your forehead against the cold glass window, and for just a moment your mind drifts not to the machines or the quotas, but to the poem in your lunch tin, and the woman who dares to write it. The tram rocks gently like an old cradle with a cough. You sway with it half asleep, your breath fogging the glass. Outside, Moscow passes in slow motion, a blur of soot-streaked buildings, bundled pedestrians, and streetlights that flicker as if they're thinking of giving up. You wonder if anyone else on this tram is carrying poetry in their lunch tin. Probably not. Most carry bread or matches or ration cards that don't match the promises they came with. The man beside you smells faintly of vodka and metal. He's asleep, mouth slightly open, hat tilting dangerously. You recognize him from the factory line 6 ribbon threading. He dreams with the same exhaustion you wear like a second coat. You get off 2 stops early, not because you need to, but because the air inside was too warm and your thoughts were getting stuck in it. The cold outside is like a slap that forgot to be angry. It wakes you just enough. You walk. Past the library that hasn't had new books in 5 years. Past the monument to Soviet optimism, with its cheerful metalworker eternally mid-hammer, pointed toward a future that never quite lands. You pass the alley where someone once whispered a joke too loudly and then disappeared for 2 weeks. The snow underfoot is beginning to turn that special city gray like slush and pencil lead. You don't mind. Your apartment building looms like a tired elephant. 8 floors of identical windows and laundry lines, creaking pipes, and walls thin enough to hear the neighbor's son practicing the accordion badly. You nod to the old woman by the stairwell who always knits but never speaks. Her scarf today is brown and crooked. Inside the stairwell smells of boiled cabbage and wet wool. You take the steps slowly. The elevator hasn't worked since before Stalin died, and you trust your legs more than rusted cables anyway. Your key sticks as always. You jiggle it. The door creaks open with the resignation of a long-married spouse. Home, if the word means anything anymore. Your one-room flat is both kitchen and bedroom with a single window that faces the courtyard trash bins. A wooden table holds a kettle, a stack of coupons, and your one chipped plate. There's a plant in the corner barely alive. It's clinging to life out of spite, and you respect that. You light the stove mostly for heat. You warm yesterday's soup. It's mostly water. As it warms, you change out of your factory clothes. Your only other set isn't much better, but at least it's clean. You wipe your hands on the towel that doubles as a curtain. You sit on the edge of your bed. And finally, you pull out the poem. The folded scrap of paper feels heavier than it should. You unfold it slowly like it might crumble. Galina's handwriting is neat, sharp, fierce. You read it again, this time slower. The line that catches you most is, "We type what we're told, but think between the lines." It's the kind of line that could get her reassigned, or worse. But it's also the kind that feels like a window opening. You tuck the paper back into your lunch tin and hide it under the bed beneath a loose floorboard where you once stored your mother's letters. You sit there for a while, staring at nothing, listening to the radiator hiss like it's whispering secrets in a language only the pipes understand. A knock at the door. You freeze. It's soft. 2 knocks. Then silence. You wait. Another knock, slightly louder. You move to the door. Through the peephole, Galina. You open it quickly, stepping aside. She doesn't smile, just brushes snow from her coat and steps inside without a word. She hands you a small cloth bundle. "Bread. You didn't eat properly," she says. You nod. You didn't. You take it, slice it quietly, place it on the table. You make tea. The 2 of you sit in silence. The good kind. Eventually she speaks. They ask me questions today. You look up. Her face is unreadable, nothing direct, just questions. About hobbies. About who I sit next to. Your stomach knots. Do they know you ask? She shrugs. They suspect. They always suspect. You both sip tea. Outside, the accordion boy plays the same wrong note 3 times in a row. You say you should stop writing. She says I can't. And that's the end of that. Later she leaves. You walk her down the stairs, both of you careful to say nothing. You don't even look at each other. At the bottom she pauses. Says, if I'm not at work tomorrow, burn it. You nod. She walks into the snow, vanishing like punctuation at the end of a dangerous sentence. Back upstairs, you sit in the dark. The tea is cold. The plant still isn't dead. You lean back on your bed, close your eyes, and try not to think about what's coming. The poem remains beneath the floorboards. For now. The morning doesn't ask questions. It simply arrives gray, breathless, and indifferent. You wake to the sound of your neighbor swearing at a faulty radiator pipe. The words are muffled, but the intent is clear. You sit up slowly, listening for anything else. Birds, no. Just more footsteps on the landing, someone's child crying 2 doors down, and the unmistakable clatter of pots. No knock at your door, no familiar cough in the hallway, no Galena. You feel it in your stomach before you think it through. That hollow sensation that something is already missing and you're the last one to realize it. Still you move, because that's what you do. Because showing hesitation is like raising a flag in a place where flags aren't allowed unless they're red. You boil water, tear a corner off your last piece of bread. Sip lukewarm tea made from reused leaves. It's barely food, but your appetite is buried somewhere under layers of anxiety anyway. You dress, the usual clothes, the usual coat. But today you check the pocket twice before stepping out. The stairwell smells different. Less like cabbage, more like silence. A few doors are shut tighter than usual. You pass the old woman knitting in the hallway. She doesn't look up this time. On the street, the tram is 5 minutes late. Or maybe you're early. Time is hard to measure when you're not sure you slept. Snow crunches beneath your boots. You don't run. You don't panic. But every step feels louder than it should. At the tram stop, you wait beside Pavel. He nods, asks nothing, just says, no Galena today. You nod back. Sick, maybe. Neither of you believe it. But saying it out loud makes it easier to keep walking. The factory is colder than usual, or maybe it's just you. The machines groan to life. The lights buzz. Everything is moving, except line 3. Galena's seat is empty. There's no note on the clipboard, no explanation, just the absence of her tools, her coat, her sharpness. Makarov doesn't mention her during the morning briefing. He talks instead about productivity numbers and winter quotas. His voice is the same as ever, monotone, mildly resentful, like a man arguing with gravity. You pretend to write something down. Your pen scratches nonsense on a blank corner of the machine manual. You don't dare look up. By midday, the questions begin to chew on your thoughts. Was it the poem? Was it you? You remember her warning. Burn it. But you didn't. You told yourself you would if something happened. But you haven't. You're not sure if that's bravery or cowardice. Either way, the poem still sleeps beneath your floorboard next to the last letter from your mother and a chipped badge from your military service. 3 things you can't throw away. 3 things that could ruin you. Lunch break. The canteen is as bleak as ever. Pavel sits across from you, stirs his soup in slow, deliberate circles. He speaks without looking up. She was seen near the station last night. 2 men in gray coats. You nod once. He adds, could be anything. You both know it's not. You chew on a piece of rye bread so dry it cracks like old plaster. Do you think she's... You start, but he cuts you off. Don't. You don't know. I don't know. Just finish your lunch. And so you do. Not because you're hungry, but because sitting here doing nothing would make you scream. The rest of the shift passes like a wet blanket, heavy, suffocating, and inescapable. Each machine you fix feels like a betrayal. Each ribbon you thread feels like you're pretending everything is fine. Every screw tightened is another piece of silence. When the final bell rings, you're already halfway to the gate. The wind bites as you step out. and for the first time in weeks, you don't wait for Pavel. You walk home alone, fast head down, heart somewhere near your throat. The apartment is dark, cold. You light the stove, boil water, don't drink it. Instead, you pull up the floorboard. There it is, Galina's poem, still folded neatly, still dangerous. You hold it in your hand just long enough to feel your pulse echo against the paper. Then carefully, you open it again. Read it one more time. We type what we're told, but think between the lines. Our fingers speak in silence while our eyes read between spines. You imagine her voice reading it aloud. It would have been low, steady, not sad, but certain. You move to the stove. The flame flickers. You hover the edge of the paper near it. It curls slightly. You blink. You can't do it. You put it back under the floorboard. And this time you add something else. A blank sheet. Your handwriting, a new poem. It's not as good, but it's yours. That night you don't sleep much. You stare at the ceiling, counting cracks. Thinking about all the things people never say aloud. Thinking about how in this city silence isn't golden. It's survival. And how the line between bravery and foolishness is so thin you can type on it. The factory doesn't mention Galina again, not the next day, not the day after that, not even in whispers. It's as if the chair she once occupied had never existed, as if her boots never clacked across the concrete floor, and as if her voice never stitched poetry into lunch breaks and eye rolls. Erased not by force but by routine. You're beginning to understand here forgetting is part of the job. You adjust to the absence like you'd adjust to a sore tooth cautiously and with a dull ache. Line 3 is reassigned to a young man who doesn't speak much. His face is soft, maybe 20, and he still apologizes to machines when he drops a screw. He doesn't know that chair is haunted. You almost feel sorry for him. Almost. By now your days have taken on an extra layer of tension. You still clock in. You still fix the same model. You still hum when the radio plays that cheerful march, though now it sounds like a threat in 4/4 time. But you've become more aware of footsteps that hesitate behind you, of questions that sound innocent, but land with weight, of the way supervisors tilt their heads just a second too long when you speak. You haven't been called in for questioning. Not yet. But you've seen people disappear for less than harboring a poem. And poems, you're starting to realize, are more dangerous than guns in a place where words are supposed to line up in perfect order, just like the keys on a typewriter. It's late Thursday when you see it. On your workstation. Just a mark, nothing more. A small red circle drawn with grease pencil on the underside of your daily report clipboard. You wouldn't notice it unless you were looking for it. But you've learned to look. Red grease pencil. It means someone has tagged you for extra attention. Could be random. Could be nothing. Could be the beginning. You don't react. You finish your shift. You joke with Pavel. You eat the soup in the canteen. You clock out exactly on time. You walk home. You don't breathe. Not really. Once home, you check the floorboard. The poem is still there. So is yours. You stare at them for a long time. Then you add a third piece of paper, blank folded, waiting. You tell yourself it's just paper. But your hands shake slightly when you hide it again. That night you dream about the factory, except it's made of typewriter parts. The walls are stacked with keys. The floor is ink ribbon. The ceiling drips oil. You wander through endless hallways, each one leading to Galina's empty chair. She turns to you, says something you can't hear, then vanishes before you can ask her to repeat it. You wake with your mouth dry and your pillow damp. It's 4:20 a.m. You don't sleep again. The next morning, Pavel finds you before first bell. He says nothing, just hands you a small wrapped packet. Inside a pencil, a sharpened blade, and a blank sheet of thin, crumpled paper. You nod. He nods. This is not a plan, not yet, but it's something. He whispers, "They came to my sister's building yesterday, asked about who visits, who lingers." You say, "Did she say anything?" He smiles without humor. "She bakes a lot. She claims she thought they were asking about stale bread." You both chuckle. It dies quickly. Later that day, your machine jams. Not a big problem. A ribbon misaligned. A tiny screw fallen loose. You fix it in under a minute. But the floor manager sees you open the housing. He walks over. Too fast, too curious. He says, "Problem," you reply, "No, comrade, just a ribbon catch." He nods. Then, unexpectedly, he asks, "Do you enjoy working here?" Your spine straightens. Your skin prickles. Your heart stumbles. You say, "Of course." He nods again. Too slow this time. Then he walks away. You watch his back like it's a storm cloud. On your way home that night, you see two men across the street, standing still, smoking. They don't look at you, but you still feel watched. You don't turn your head. You don't run. You just keep walking. Like every other worker in this frozen city, you boil water again. Don't drink it. Instead, you write. Not a poem this time. A list. Names, places, things you remember from before. A man in a brown hat who used to work line 2. A woman who folded her lunch napkin with too much precision. A manager who vanished after his son spoke too freely at school. You don't know why you're writing it. Maybe to remember. Maybe to make sense of it. Maybe because if you stop writing, you'll forget what matters. And forgetting, as you've learned, is another way to vanish. You hear accordion music again. But this time it's a new song. Off-key, yes, but the notes are unfamiliar. A risk, a small one, and somehow it comforts you. Even bad music means someone is still trying. You sleep lightly, wake often, listen to the pipes breathing, the floor creaking, the city whispering. Galina is still gone, but her words echo. We type what we're told. And you. You're starting to wonder if you can type something else. Something that isn't part of the plan. Something no one expects. Something worth hiding under a floorboard. You stop carrying the poem with you. That's the first change. You keep it tucked away beneath the floorboard, double-wrapped now in wax paper, tucked behind your folded undershirts and a tin of broken buttons. It doesn't deserve to travel, not in this climate, not with eyes always watching, boots always echoing louder than logic. Still, it moves with you. Not physically, but you hear it sometimes in the rhythm of the type bars, in the pause between Pavel's jokes, in the rattle of the tram tracks when no one's speaking. Galina's absence has stopped being news. It's simply air now. A silence that settles, and that in itself feels worse. At the factory, a new woman takes Galina's place. She's older, with hair tied too tight and lips that move without smiling. She doesn't ask names or make jokes. She types efficiently, quietly, perfectly. On the second day, she glances at you while adjusting her ribbon coil. Her expression is unreadable, maybe curious, maybe cold. You nod politely. She does not nod back. That evening you check your clipboard again. No red marks, just numbers and oil smudges. But you don't relax, not anymore. The days pass with predictable monotony. You wake, you work, you eat. You lie in bed and imagine you're somewhere else, perhaps a train station where people are free to leave, or a library where books haven't been hollowed out for hiding spots. On one of these evenings, Pavel surprises you. He pulls you aside during second break. Not in the canteen, but in the coat room near the boiler pipes that wheeze like old lungs. He hands you a package, wrapped in newspaper tied with thread. He doesn't explain. You don't ask. You slip it into your coat heart, thrumming, and return to your station like it's just another Thursday. That night, behind a locked door with your stove lit and the window shut tight, you unwrap it. A typewriter ribbon. New. Untouched. Beneath it a piece of carbon paper. And beneath that, a folded blueprint. Hand-drawn. Crude. It shows how to modify a standard unit so that it types a second message invisibly between the lines using pressure from a hidden track and carbon impressions. You stare at it for a long time. You'd heard rumors about such devices. Rumors always. Never proof. Now you hold one in your hands. The next 3 days are a blur. You do not sleep well. Every knock, every footstep in the hallway, every elevator groan turns your stomach into stone. You hide the ribbon inside a teapot no one uses. You slide the blueprint into a hollow behind the plaster wall. You wrap the carbon sheet inside a page from Pravda and stack it between yesterday's newspapers. But the thought remains, should you build it? Can you? If so, why and for whom? These questions keep you up longer than the city lights. On the fourth day, Pavel comes to your apartment, unannounced, which never happens. You open the door alarmed, already calculating what's visible behind you. He steps inside without speaking, rubs his hands together and sits at your tiny table like it's the most natural thing. He brings bread. You bring tea. Then he finally speaks. "We can't just wait," he says. You look at him. Really look. His face is thinner. His eyes are rimmed with gray. You ask, wait for what he doesn't answer. Instead, he pulls a scrap of paper from his coat, written in pencil, small and tight. They still listen through walls. But walls forget. We write to remind them. Your throat tightens. "Galena," you whisper. He nods. She passed it through a friend. Last month. You read it again, then fold it gently. Then without a word you stand across the room, lift the floorboard and place the note beside the others. It's official now. The collection has begun. You start making plans. You examine the blueprint at night, memorizing its curves. You study the mechanics of your assigned model at work, noting where pressure can be rerouted, where a secret message could slip past even the sharpest eye. You start saving scraps of paper, ink pads, wax. It's nothing yet, but it could be something. That week the factory changes its schedule. Longer hours, fewer breaks. Productivity quotas posted higher on the walls, now typed in bold black ink. Someone whispers, "They're watching again." Someone else replies, "They never stopped." You keep your head down, hands steady. But inside something is sharpening. One evening on your way home, you pass a man playing violin outside the train station. It's snowing. He's barefoot. The melody is slow, familiar, an old wartime lullaby. You drop a coin into his case. He doesn't stop playing, but he winks, barely noticeable. You keep walking, and for the first time in weeks you smile. That night you write your own verse. It's clumsy. The meter's off, but it feels real. They took her voice, but not her echo. The walls remember. The machines listen. You fold it carefully like the others, and place it with reverence into the growing archive beneath your bed. You don't know who you're saving them for, but maybe someday someone will need to read the things you couldn't say aloud. And maybe, just maybe, they'll understand that you didn't fix typewriters for a living. You fixed memory. Snow arrives in earnest. Not the pretty kind from postcards, but the tired Soviet kind, gray at the edges, too damp to sparkle and endlessly kicked into slush by impatient boots. It gathers at the factory gates and melts under the heavy wheels of delivery trucks, only to refreeze into treacherous ridges that the janitor hacks at with a rusted shovel. You trudge through it like everyone else, collar up, head down. Inside your coat pocket you carry nothing of interest. That is the goal. By now the typewriter factory feels less like a workplace and more like a stage. Each movement must be careful, each sentence practiced. You don't speak unless necessary. You laugh only when others do. You eat what they eat, leave when they leave, and never ever linger too long in one place. But beneath the performance you are watching and listening, because now you have a mission. It's small, fragile, and mostly unspoken, but it's yours. The modifications begin quietly. A paperclip reshaped. A housing plate loosened, a spring calibrated just off standard. The work is slow, frustrating, but deliberate. You test everything in your mind first, walking through the blueprint like it's a floor plan of a secret room no one else sees. You imagine the ribbon clicking in silence, pressing hidden impressions between the official lines of state-approved forms. You imagine someone reading those ghosts one day, someone who needs to know that not everyone agreed, that even among the clatter of iron and ideology, there were whispers. You don't know who that someone is, but thinking of them makes the factory seem less heavy. Pavel continues to play dumb. He jokes about politics just enough to blend in, never enough to draw attention. He scratches his chin when supervisors walk by as if contemplating production quotas. You've started calling him the philosopher in your head. He grins when you tell him, then says, "Better than being called the missing." And just like that, the air tightens again. You change the subject, but the tension stays. One night you find something new tucked under your door. A single sheet of paper, folded once, no name. Inside, your machine clicks slower than before. Maybe the ghosts are getting heavy. A fan. You don't recognize the handwriting, but it's not hostile. In fact, it feels oddly comforting, like someone else is watching the same shadows. You burn the note anyway. Then you write down the words from memory and tuck them into your floorboard archive. Not everything has to survive on paper. Some things can survive in rhythm. Winter deepens, steam pipes wheeze louder, milk arrives frozen, bread goes staler faster. The younger workers complain. The older ones don't bother. You start noticing who brings lunch in tin containers and who eats from state-issued canteen trays. You make mental notes of who shares cigarettes and who always has exactly one match left. Small things, but telling. A pattern emerges: the ones who share often speak less. The loudest ones eat alone. And no one ever asks what happened to Galena. She's become a dangerous name, like a rumor with teeth. On Tuesday, you see the factory director walking the floor. That never happens. He's shorter than you imagined, round with a mustache that twitches when he frowns. He wears gloves indoors and doesn't shake hands. You keep your head down. You feel his gaze pass over you, then return. You force yourself to keep typing, but your spine itches. Later, Pavel tells you the director was here because someone reported unusual behavior in the maintenance department. You don't ask who, you already know. And you also know what unusual means: too quiet, too focused, too curious. All the things you are. You make a decision that night. It's time to test the modified typewriter. Only a few lines. Nothing dramatic. Just a phrase typed normally, then a hidden message between. You use the carbon sheet, carefully pressure adjusted. When you're done, you hold the page to the light. The official lines say, "Maintenance complete. Machine 4B ready for shift turnover." But between the lines, barely visible, we remember what they erase. You sit back. Exhale. Not relief. Something heavier. You tuck the sheet inside your old military certificate, roll them together, and place them in the tin box beneath the floorboard. Then you write again, this time a verse. The keys don't care who gives the order, but they remember what was pressed. And ink forgets, but carbon knows the weight of words suppressed. It's the best you've written, so far. The following day you're pulled aside, not into an office, not with raised voices, just a casual request from Makarov. He wants to know why your shift reports have more detail lately. He says it with a smile that doesn't reach his eyes. You shrug, trying to be useful. He nods. That's good. But you know how too much detail can confuse people. Your mouth goes dry. You nod. Of course. He claps your shoulder and leaves. You wipe your hands on your trousers even though they aren't sweating. Yet. You tell Pavel that night. He doesn't look surprised. He just says, "Then we're doing it right." And suddenly the fear inside you turns into something new. Not courage exactly, but resistance. A silent one, with ink instead of knives. Your feet have learned the path to work so well they no longer ask for direction. Left past the frozen laundry lines, right at the rusted mailbox down the street where the dog with the bad eye sometimes limps by. Past the bakery that hasn't sold real bread in months, and the bulletin board that somehow keeps getting fuller with posters that say less and less. You walk the route like a thread through a needle, precise, familiar, unthinking. But lately you've begun to wonder what would happen if you took a different turn. Just one day. A left instead of a right. Would the factory send someone? Would the neighbors talk? Would your absence cause more questions than your presence ever did? These are dangerous thoughts. You shelve them for now. In the meantime, your secret machine is getting better, faster. The pressure adjustments are smoother now. The hidden carbon layers leave cleaner impressions. You figured out how to feed standard forms into it and sneak a message between the lines without anyone noticing. You've even taught yourself how to read them back with a mirror and soft graphite pencil. It's like developing a photograph made of memory. One night you type a message that's nothing at all. Clouds hang low today. The pigeons look tired. Between the lines, though, director wears new gloves, smelled of tobacco, not from our brand. You don't know who you're writing it for, but it feels real, necessary, like an invisible footnote to a world that insists on being legible only in bold, state-approved font. The snow turns to ice. Trams stall more often. Workers slip. Everyone gets quieter. A man from line 6 breaks his wrist and mutters something about quitting. No one says anything in reply. Even Pavel, usually your foolproof conversational escape hatch, begins to wear a different kind of silence, one that stretches, tightens, and waits. He's worried about something, but you don't ask. You both know the rules. Ask nothing. Offer bread. He accepts the bread, breaks it in half. You chew in sync. It's during this quieter time that you meet Anya. She arrives on a Tuesday unannounced, assigned to documentation review. She's not like the others. Too well-spoken, too clean, too alert. She walks the floor slowly, clipboard in hand, like she's listening to more than just machine noise. Her eyes pause too long on control panels. She asks questions that seem harmless but land too close to sore spots. She stops at your station. You've been here. How long, she asks, reading your name badge without looking at your face. You answer 8 years. She nods. That's loyal. You nod back. But you say nothing. She writes something down, moves on. You watch her all day. And that night you dream of a typewriter that types only the truth and bites the fingers of those who try to lie. You wake with your heart in your throat. You check under the floorboard before your feet even touch the ground. Still there, everything intact. But something tells you that won't last. A week later she returns, this time with 2 men. They don't walk like workers. They walk like decisions. They don't carry clipboards. They carry questions that sound like statements. One of them stops by your machine. He taps the metal housing. Old model, he says. You nod. He lifts the cover just an inch, peers inside. You feel your lungs shrink. It's clean, he mutters. You nod again. He lingers a beat too long, then walks away. That night you do something reckless. You write a full letter, 3 pages, to no one and everyone. You don't sign it. You don't date it. You write about Galena, about the machine, about the hidden messages, about the fear that coats every doorway like frost. You write the truth, then you fold it and burn it, watching the edges curl in your sink. You're not ready to let it out, but you needed to let it exist, even if only for a moment. You still go to work, still fix the machines, still swap poems with Pavel, now in careful syllables whispered during oil checks. But you feel something changing. It's not the machines, it's not the quotas, it's the air. It has weight now, like it knows things. A week later, a man from line 2 is transferred. No explanation, no farewell, just gone. His chair is filled by morning. You ask nothing. But at lunch, Pavel slides you a folded napkin. Inside, his machine had a note inside, not yours, but close. You nod. Silently thank every rivet and bolt in your modified model. Anya is back again. This time she walks straight to you. You ever write poetry, she asks suddenly. It takes everything in you not to flinch. No, you say eyes on your ribbon. She watches you, smiles slightly, says shame. You look like someone who listens to rhythm. Then she walks off. You don't move for 5 minutes. That night you write another poem. This one's angry. Too angry to keep, so you tear it up. Flush it 1 piece at a time. You stare at the water until it clears. Then you whisper, not yet. Then you go to bed and dream of type bars turning into wings. The thaw begins slowly. Not in the air. Moscow Februaries have never been known for generosity, but in the small, almost imperceptible ways the city starts to shift when it thinks you're not looking. Salt on the stairs earlier than expected. Fewer factory sirens. A man selling roasted chestnuts again by the tram depot, as if daring spring to hurry up. You don't believe in seasons anymore, but your coat seems slightly lighter this week. Or maybe your shoulders are. You're still being watched. That much hasn't changed. But now, someone is also reading. It begins with a smudge, left on a work order you know you didn't handle. A faint line of graphite between 2 stamped approval fields. At first you think it's a mistake, a misprint. Then the second day you see another. This time words. Just 2. Keep going. Written in nearly invisible pressure, so faint you need angled light and patience to find it. Not your hand. Not Pavel's either. Someone else. A second ghost in the machine. Your hands shake as you finish your task that day. You check every clipboard, every carbon sheet, every discarded form. More messages follow. Sparse, careful, hidden. You're not alone. Carbon remembers. Even silence hums. You start leaving replies, not always with words, sometimes just a slight misalignment, a deliberate typo on a meaningless word, an extra blank form in a stack where there shouldn't be. Your invisible pen pal always finds it, and always answers. Pavel doesn't ask questions, he doesn't need to, but you tell him one night anyway over your now routine tea and bread. There's someone else, you say. He nods, I figured. Your hands don't twitch like they used to. You've got company in your danger. You smile, and for once it doesn't feel grim. At the factory, the director doesn't return, but Anya does, more frequently now. She walks with less curiosity and more certainty. She no longer pretends she's just inspecting machines. She's watching people now. And you, well, you're at the top of her invisible list. She lingers longer, stands behind you more often than is polite, never speaks, but always waits. For a slip, for a sign, for a weakness. You give her none. You type. You fix. You smile blandly when required. And then on the fourth visit she says something. You're left-handed, she observes. You pause. A beat too long. Yes, you reply. She nods slowly, then adds, so was your predecessor, and walks off. You don't sleep that night. You barely breathe. You lie in bed and listen to every creak of the building, every cough from the neighbor above, every hiss of radiator steam like it might suddenly spell your name. You think about packing, about leaving. But where would you go and what would happen to the archive under the floorboard you stay? Because there is still more to write. 2 days later, another message arrives, pressed into a form for routine lubrication reports. Careful. She knows something, but not everything. And then beneath it, trust the philosopher. You show it to Pavel. He reads it in silence, then eats the form like a sandwich. I always liked paper, he says, chewing with exaggerated care. You laugh harder than you should, and that night you write your longest poem yet. It's about doors, and all the things they keep out, and everything they let in. The next morning you arrive at work to find your station dismantled, not destroyed, just opened. The housing removed, the type bars exposed, the ribbon replaced. Your tools are gone, and in their place a folded document with your name. You hold it like it might catch fire. Inside reassignment, effective immediately. You are to report to Line Assembly Oversight Annex B. You look up. Pavel is staring. So is Anya. She stands near the stairs, arms folded, lips tight, watching. You go. What else can you do? Annex B is in the basement. Darker, colder, less noise, and far fewer people. There are only 6 of you. No one speaks. The machines are larger here, bulkier models for government offices. Slower, louder, less poetic. You are given a new bench, a new toolkit, and a wall chart of parts. You fix. You nod. You obey. But something is wrong. The rhythm is off. By day 3, you're certain. This is exile. Not termination, not arrest. Worse. They are watching to see what you'll do when left alone, when your hands are idle, when your typewriter can't sing. So you make it sing anyway. You modify one of the older units, quietly. It takes longer down here. More eyes, less trust. But eventually you get it working. Not a message machine this time. A music machine. Every 10th keystroke rings slightly, just enough to mimic the old lullaby Galena used to hum. You test it. It works. It's ridiculous. And completely untraceable. But it makes you smile. And for now, that's enough. Your next message is short. Typed on Annex B's clunky form, #1743C, hidden between the lines of a maintenance log. She moved me, but not far enough. You don't know who'll read it. But someone will. Because the factory isn't as tight as it thinks. Because ghosts don't live in just one hallway. And because you're not done yet. You're only warming up. You discover the sound first. It's not music, not really, but it loops low and steady through the Annex B ventilation grates, a rhythmic clicking too slow to be factory machinery, too precise to be an accident. You pause mid-task, a screw still between your fingers, and tilt your head. There it is again. Click. Pause. Click, click. Pause. It's Morse. Sloppy, yes, but unmistakably so. It seems impossible. Absurd, even. Yet you can't stop yourself from scribbling a translation onto the margin of your inventory form with the nub of a borrowed pencil. The message, once deciphered, is short. We're still here. Your fingers close around the paper before you even think. Someone else, someone not in Annex B, is still working, still resisting, still finding ways to reach you. And now you're listening. The next morning you bring a small wrench from home. Not unusual. You've done it before. But this time, you wrap a strip of copper wire around the handle just beneath the grip. When the light hits it right, it flashes barely. That afternoon, you take a slow walk past the vent shaft nearest the freight elevator. 3 steps. Flash, flash, flash. A crude response, but maybe crude is enough. You count slowly in your head, 1, 2, 3, then pause by a pipe long enough to hear the clicks again, only now they spell something else. Glad you're not dead. You smile, briefly, just a curl of the mouth. It's the first time in days your face remembers how. Pavel doesn't work in Annex B. You haven't seen him since the reassignment. At first you wonder if he's been told to keep his distance. But then a folded page appears inside your jacket during second shift break. No name, no mark, but you know it's him. The words inside are short. I taught the new girl the rhythm. She's terrible at it, but she learns fast. Keep your signals small and your questions smaller. You read it twice, then tear it up and let the pieces drift one by one down the heating vent. Later that night, you leave a note in the annex break room wall seam, a spot where a panel always rattles no matter how tight the screws. Just a line. The type bars hum, but no one sings. 2 days later, it's gone. There's a boy in Annex B now, 15 maybe. He sweeps floors, delivers parts, mostly keeps his head down. But once he bumps your bench and mutters an apology using the wrong verb form one no Moscow kid would use. You look up. He meets your eyes, and you both understand. He's from the country, not one of them, not yet. You start leaving small clues, not words. Things only someone listening carefully would notice: a line of screwdrivers sorted by the wrong size order, a ribbon spool reversed on purpose, a spring coiled 3 degrees too tight, the kind of errors no trained technician would ever make, unless they wanted someone curious to ask why. By week's end, the boy slips you a package while pretending to refill the tool tray. Inside, 1 slice of bread slightly stale. Under the crust, a slip of carbon paper with a message. One of the girls on floor 3 says thank you for the poem. She reads them all. You nearly drop it. Someone's been finding them, copying them, sharing them. Not everyone in the factory is asleep. Some are dreaming, and some are wide awake. The pressure eases just slightly. You no longer feel like a single crack in the dam. You're part of something now, still undefined, still fragile, but real. And that makes the quiet hours less hollow. One afternoon, while calibrating a coil assembly, you notice your reflection in the brass panel. You stare longer than usual. Your face is thinner, your eyes more watchful. You don't recognize the person completely, but he doesn't scare you. You nod to him, just once, then keep working. The next morning, Anya returns, not to speak, not even to inspect, just to look. She walks through the annex like she owns it. She probably does. You feel her pass behind your bench. You don't turn, but she lingers, a beat too long. You imagine what would happen if she found the modified keys, the extra spool, the carbon sheet hidden in the toolbox beneath the floor mat. You count to 5, then 10. She moves on. You exhale, not relief. Not yet, but survival. That night you write again. They tried to exile a whisper, but the ductwork carried it. The floorboards sang it, and the carbon didn't forget. You slide the slip beneath the boiler door on sublevel 2. A gamble, but you've made worse. 3 days later, a message is etched faintly into your bench. So faint it could be mistaken for a scratch, but it's too deliberate, too careful. It reads, "The new girl writes better now. She says your ghosts taught her." You trace the letters lightly with your thumb, then return to work. And that night in the dark, you dream of a great machine, not a typewriter, not a press, but something larger, made entirely of stories people weren't supposed to tell. It clicks, it hums, and it never stops, not even for silence. The snow finally melts in chunks. Not gracefully, nothing in Moscow does, but with the grudging defeat of winter that leaves behind mud-cracked pavement and the faintest smell of something alive trying to return. The sidewalks are a slalom of puddles. Your boots, already weary, give up pretending to be waterproof. Even the factory looks different now. Not brighter, just revealed. The grime on the windows is no longer camouflaged by frost. The rust on the gate is bolder. The cracks in the stairwell tiles have names if you stare long enough. Everything's tired, including you. But you're not finished. Not while the machine still works. Your modified typewriter is aging poorly. The ribbon jams more often. One of the keys T unfortunately sticks every third press. You've adjusted, of course, learning to type around it, letting the errors become part of the rhythm. But it's a reminder nothing lasts forever, not even resistance. Pavel sends you a jar of pickled beets as a joke. Inside, taped to the lid beneath a wax paper seal, is a tiny message. They moved me again. Floor 2, near the stampers. Still listening, still watching. Our new friend says hi. You don't know who the new friend is yet, but you're glad they exist. You write back on a folded oil receipt. Even broken keys make sound. That's enough. You leave it in the locker room's sink pipe where the leak never stops dripping. 2 days later it's gone, and someone leaves you a candy, wrapped, unopened, unpoisoned probably. It tastes like cardboard. You smile anyway. The boy in Annex B Mitya you've learned has become more useful than anyone expected. He's quick, quiet, and fluent in the strange code of your daily resistance. He's the kind of listener who hears what wasn't said. And he's brave, too brave. You catch him once trying to wedge a carbon note behind a supervisor's calendar. You stop him with a shake of the head so sharp it hurts your neck. Later you whisper, "We build slowly." You don't light the match inside the powder room. He nods, then mutters, "But sometimes it itches." You get it. God, do you get it? Your next message is a joke. Sort of. If you're reading this, you're too close to the barrel. Move 2 desks left and blink once for yes. The next day, a girl from assembly blinks once at you in the stairwell. Just once. No smile, no eye contact. Just enough to let you know the barrel is crowded. And maybe not aimed at you. Yet. One afternoon, Makarov appears. Not in person, he's above these floors now, but in the form of a memo. Printed, signed, stamped 3 times. Productivity in Annex B remains under optimal quota. Workers may be reassigned or reviewed. Regular evaluations begin next week. You know what that means. So does everyone else. Eyes drop, shoulders curve inward. Even the machines seem to hum more nervously. Pavel sends another message, this one on a slip tucked inside a replacement spring coil. They're cleaning house. Watch your tone. 2 of ours gone already. 1 whispered your name. Not in a bad way. Your stomach knots. You run the math. You've been careful. So careful. But the more people who hear your rhythm, the more likely it echoes where it shouldn't. You consider silence, but only briefly. Then you type something new. This one's for Anya, because you know she's still watching. The form reads like any other. Maintenance log 12C, signed, dated, flawless. But between the lines where only the ghosts will read. If I fall, it won't be alone. The keys are many, and we remember how to echo. You let the machine cool for a full hour before you leave. The next morning your workstation is pristine, too pristine. Everything reset, tools polished, nothing missing but everything touched. You take inventory twice. No bugs, no cameras, no notes. But someone's been here. Someone wants you to know they could have done more, but didn't. Yet. Later in the hallway, Anya brushes past you. No words. Just a folded corner of paper pressed into your palm as if you were shaking hands. You pocket it without flinching. At home, you unfold it. It reads, "You're not stupid. Neither am I. Choose carefully where the next words fall. It's not a threat. Not really. Not fully. It's a warning. And maybe, just maybe, an opening." That night you walk the factory perimeter twice. Not because you're lost, but because you're thinking about what happens if you stop, about who would notice, about who would hurt, and who would sigh in relief. You stare at the roof, at the cracked smokestack, at the stars that pretend not to care. Then you whisper, "Not yet," and go back in. There's a draft under your bed when you wake up. You reach under. A note, folded small, smells faintly of oil. You didn't hear anyone come in. You didn't hear them leave. It reads, "When the time comes, listen for 3 long clicks, then go. No questions." It isn't signed, but the paper feels familiar. The kind used on floor 2. where Pavel is, or was. You memorize the pattern. 3 long clicks. Simple, unmistakable. It could mean salvation or arrest, but you don't care, because the worst thing would be silence. The calendar in Annex B never flips anymore. It's still pinned to February, though the factory clocks insist it's April. No one wants to be the one to change it. That torn paper feels like a dare, like flipping the month might start something they can't stop. You don't touch it either. Some silences are safer than others, but outside the world insists on thawing. The sun holds longer. Pigeons roost closer to window ledges. Someone chalks a crooked hopscotch grid on the sidewalk behind the freight door. And then one evening it happens. 3 long clicks, evenly spaced, carried through the ventilation shaft. You freeze. Not because you're surprised, but because part of you never thought you'd actually hear it. You've repeated the pattern in your head like a lullaby, not an alarm, but now it's real. 3 clicks. Go. You move without thinking. No time to pack, no time to consider the exits. You only grab one thing, the ribbon from your machine, frayed, inky, worn, smooth at the vowels. Your fingerprints live there, your words too. If you're going to disappear, at least take the alphabet with you. The hallway is empty, too empty. A ghost factory. Your steps echo louder than you want. You pass the calendar. Still February. You salute it, out of habit, out of superstition. At the stairwell, a shadow moves. You flinch only to see Mitya. He's holding a box of machine parts that obviously doesn't belong to him. Inside, you spot wire, a tin of lubricant, and what looks suspiciously like a forged ID badge. He grins. "This was the plan, right?" he whispers. You shake your head slowly. "This is a plan. Close enough." He gestures to the back hallway. "We're going to the old records room," he says. "They won't check it tonight. There's a leak." "A leak?" "Of course there is." You follow. The records room hasn't been used in years. It smells like regret and linoleum. Boxes stacked like tombstones. Files yellowing in real time. Labels written in a dozen forgotten hands. You close the door behind you. Mitya wedges a bench against it just in case. Then he crouches and begins to pull back a loose panel inside a narrow chute. Probably a laundry duct once. Maybe just forgotten infrastructure. Now it's a tunnel. Down. Where does it lead, you ask? He shrugs. They say it connects to the old print hall. Pre-war. There's a crawl space. From there we figure it out. You raise an eyebrow. I'm not letting the poet of Annex B vanish alone. He says it like a joke, but his voice shakes just enough to make your heart hurt. The crawl is brutal, tight, dusty, smells like trapped winters and dead plans. You feel each rib scrape concrete. Each breath costs more than the last. But you keep going, because you heard the clicks. And once the clicks begin, you don't stop. After what feels like an hour and probably is, you drop into a chamber. It's dimly lit, dusty, and filled with abandoned paper reels. The print hall, forgotten but intact. You slump to the floor. Mitya lands beside you with a groan. Well, he pants, it's not paradise. But it's not Annex B. You both laugh, and then you don't, because above you hear boots. Not many, but enough. They're looking. You hide. You breathe dust and ink and the taste of almost caught. Mitya curls behind a rusted press. You wedge yourself between a wall and a reel. Minutes pass, maybe more. Eventually the boots leave. The silence returns. You exhale like it's the first breath you've taken all day. There's a crate near the back labeled in fading Cyrillic manual duplicators, archive use only. Inside are old mimeograph drums, paper stencils, dried ink. You and Mitya stare, and you understand. This place is more than a hiding spot. It's a message factory. You get to work, because of course you do. You've been building toward this moment your whole life. The drum is rusted but usable. The stencil paper brittle but compliant. Your fingers remember. Letter after letter. Not full poems, just lines, signals, codes. The new resistance doesn't need manifestos. It needs whispers with teeth. By dawn, the first copies are done. Rough, smudged, perfect. You fold one, slide it into your boot, hand another to Mitya. He holds it like a sacred text. What now, he asks. We deliver. How you grin. Poorly, sloppily, desperately. He nods. That I can do. You leave the print hall just before morning shift begins. blending with the gray wave of workers. One more face, one more coat. You slip a page into a toolbox near the line manager's station, another under a teacup in the break room, a third behind the cracked mirror in the washroom. You're reckless, but careful. And Mitya, he's better than you expected. You hear the whispers begin within 2 days. A phrase passed casually. The type bars hum again. A second one scrawled faintly on the back of a ration slip. Not all ink is watched. They don't know it's you, but they know. And that's enough. You're not alone anymore. You were never alone, really. You just had to listen to the clicks, to the creaks, to the ghosts in the keys. And now you hum again, even if the ribbon sticks, even if the keys jam, even if Anya walks by and smiles that knowing smile. You still hum, because carbon remembers, and paper sings, and typewriters. They were never just machines. They were always promises. The weeks blur, they always did, but now it's different. It's not just the repetition of factory days waking before dawn, the hiss of radiator pipes, the drudgery of assembly, and the daily soup queues. No, now it's something else. You live in 2 realities. One above ground, obedient, quiet gray. One below, frantic, fragile, pulsing with messages and mimeograph ink. You don't sleep much anymore, but you dream wider when you do. The underground print hall has become a second home. Mitya sets up a cot in one corner. You bring a thermos and candles. Sometimes others come. Never all at once, never speaking names. A woman from bookkeeping, a boy from deliveries. Someone whose face you never see clearly, only their boots by the door and the pages they leave behind. You form a rhythm, a ritual. Each message starts small, 4, maybe 5 stencils a night, quotes from forbidden novels, snippets of worker jokes. One time just a list of vegetables no one has seen in 5 years. But people read them, because you start noticing reactions. A smile that lingers too long, a nod between strangers, a typewriter in the factory humming an unusual cadence. That's how you know your secret paper trail is working. The factory breathes a little louder now. Of course, not all the signs are good. Anya doesn't visit Annex B anymore. That's worse than her visits. It means she's watching from farther away, or closer. You can't tell which. You pass her once in the stairwell. Her coat is newer, her eyes colder. She doesn't speak, just runs her finger along the banister, as if measuring how long it would take to pull everything apart. One night a note is left for you, hidden beneath the spool drawers. It isn't signed, but the handwriting is familiar. They've added new listeners to the morning radio, not music, keywords, another line beneath it. They still argue whether poems are dangerous. Let's make it obvious. You smile. It's the kind of invitation you've been waiting for. You write your boldest line yet. Direct, obvious, irrefutable. We type not because we're allowed, but because we remember how. It goes on 3 pages. In the margins you add annotations meant to look like mechanical notes. They're not. They're instructions. Where to find the other pages, how to fold them without smudging, how to pass them in plain sight. Mitya delivers the first by slipping it into a worker's overalls during a fake stumble. Another is left taped inside a bathroom stall covered by the phrase "out of order." No one touches it for hours. Then it's gone. Pavel sends word through a message carved into the underside of a tin lunch tray. Too loud, beautiful, but loud. Be ready, ready for what he doesn't say. But the message ends with a number. 17. You don't know what it means, not yet, but your bones ache like a countdown has begun. A week later there's a lockdown. No warning, just a siren. Steel doors slam, guards pour in. Every worker is searched, every bag dumped, every locker inspected. You don't breathe. Your ribbon, the one soaked in poems, is sewn into your coat lining. Not well, not invisibly. If they check the hem, they don't. They move on. But Mitya doesn't return from questioning. Neither does the girl from payroll with the ink-stained fingers. You wait. An hour. 2. By evening you know they're gone. At least for now. The next day someone else has taken Mitya's sweeping job. A man, too old, too tidy, doesn't smile, wears shoes with soles that don't squeak. You know what he is. So do the others. The whispering dies down. The clicking stops. The pages vanish. You're alone again, at least for now. But that night when you return to the underground hall, something's changed. A stack of new paper, crisp, unmarked. On top a single note. They took him, but not his words. He wrote until the last second. He wanted you to finish it. You sit down, hands trembling, and you begin. You copy what's on the drafts. Mitya's hand rough and impatient, full of crossed-out lines and words that rhyme like he thought poetry had to rhyme. It's clumsy. It's perfect. You weep while you work. But you don't stop, because carbon remembers. And carbon is all you have. At sunrise, you place one of Mitya's final poems under a loose tile in the hall. The same tile he once pretended to trip over just to make you laugh. You whisper, "I'm still typing," and walk away before the tears return. The factory doesn't feel like a prison anymore. It feels like a stage. Every hallway an audience, every click a verse. You type like your life depends on it. It probably does. You leave words in ink. You scratch verses into metal. You hum, because silence is how they win. And you're not interested in that ending. Later that week, Pavel returns, briefly. You pass each other by the freight lift, no words. But he slips you something, an old key to what he doesn't say. But scratched into its side is a number, 17. You finally understand. The archive, sub-level 17, where the earliest blueprints are kept, where the first machines were born, where the first resistance began, and maybe where it can begin again. You don't go to sub-level 17 right away. That's how people get caught by acting like something just got important. So you wait. You attend your shifts. You scrub your hands a little too clean. You ask about Mitya just once in a tone that sounds curious but not concerned. You get no answer. But you hear the silence loud and clear. So you keep quiet. And you plan. Accessing sub-level 17 isn't simple. The elevator doesn't list it. The staircase down ends at sub-level 10, sealed behind a gate that's always locked except when it isn't, which is once a week during maintenance for just 12 minutes while a janitor eats soup and complains about his knees. You time it. You rehearse the route. And on a Thursday that smells like rust and cabbage, you move. The key fits. Not smoothly, not like a hero's key in a children's story, but with a grind, a push, and the cold clunk of metal that hasn't been turned in years. Inside, dust, damp stone, a descending hallway where the air changes from stale to strange. You count steps, 37 to the bend, another 30 to the steel door. You expect a lock. There isn't one, just the kind of handle that dares you to trust it. You open it, and the past exhales. The archive is not what you imagined. No rows of pristine documents, no vaults, just a room long, narrow-lined with rusted filing cabinets and walls painted in a green that's half mildew now. The ceiling leaks. Somewhere water drips into a forgotten bucket. And at the center sits a typewriter. Old, massive, manual, not connected to anything, just waiting. You approach. Of course you do. There's a note taped to the platen, yellowed and curled. In a hand you don't recognize, everything starts here. Even the forgetting. You sit. The chair is cracked but holds. You feed in a sheet from your coat pocket. You type one word. Hello? The keys don't stick. They welcome you. You type more. Not a poem, not a message, just truth. What you've seen, who you've lost, what it costs to remember. The machine hums under your fingers, though it's not electric. It's not magic. It's just ready. And sometimes that's enough. You spend hours down there, reading fragments in the drawers. A report from 1937 redacted in 6 places. A blueprint for a machine that never got built because the man who invented it was arrested mid-design. A transcript of someone's confession clearly coerced about hiding messages in ribbon spools. You feel like you're reading your own story written a generation before you were born. When you return to Annex B, you bring a single page with you. It's dated 1926. A manifesto from a woman named Tatiana O. She worked in an earlier version of your factory. Her words feel familiar. Let them inspect the ink. Let them weigh the ribbon. They will never know which lines were meant to be read. You copy the quote onto carbon sheets. You don't sign it, but everyone knows it's yours. Within a week, whispers of Tatiana float through the hallways. Some think she's real. Some think she's you. Some think she's a ghost who types while you sleep. All of them are right. Because Tatiana now belongs to everyone who ever wanted to say something and lived in fear of the echo. Anya returns, not to punish, to negotiate. She finds you in the stairwell again, same spot. This time she speaks. "You're smarter than this," she says. "No," you reply. "I'm just tired of forgetting." She doesn't argue. She hands you a ration card marked in red ink. It's a warning, or an invitation. "I can't protect you," she says, "but I can delay the wolves." Then she walks away. And you know her silence is earned, but temporary. That night you leave a message on the factory wall, painted, not typed. Only one word: echo. By morning it's painted over. But 2 days later the same word appears in 4 other departments, different handwriting, same defiance. You don't know who did it, you don't need to, you print more now. Each line bolder. You stop hiding the rhythm. You want them to hear it. Let them try to censor a song that doesn't stop. You pass stencils across lunch trays. You leave poems in shoes outside locker stalls. You fold notes into the seams of coveralls waiting to be issued. The ghosts of Sublevel 17 speak through you, and for the first time the factory hums in harmony. Then one morning the machines stop. No warning, no siren, just silence. The worst kind. Everyone freezes, and then you hear it, the heavy clack of boots. Not security, not inspectors, someone worse. Moscow officials, real ones, clean uniforms, empty smiles. You lower your eyes, so does everyone else. But inside you're writing, already. A phrase just for them: polish your boots. We shine our words. They ask for names. No one answers. They ask again. No one moves. Then someone drops a page, deliberately. It flutters to the floor. They pick it up, they read it. It's one of yours, not signed. But it doesn't matter, because in that moment, in that hush, someone else coughs a laugh. And someone else says softly, "We remember how." They don't arrest anyone, not that day. They leave instead just as quietly as they came, with your words folded inside an official coat pocket, with eyes that say, "We'll be back," and mouths that don't need to. You don't trust the silence, no one does, but it gives you time. Time to move faster, time to write louder, time to plan. Because you know now this isn't about poems or metaphors or quiet resistance. It's about survival. That night you return to Sublevel 17. This time you bring help, 2 others, one from binding, one from ink supply. They don't speak much, but their hands are steady and their eyes burn. They help you clean the space. They help you oil the old machines. They help you resurrect a press so ancient its label is in a script predating your grandmother's school books. It's beautiful. It stinks of ghosts. And it runs. You don't just print anymore. You duplicate. You organize. You spread. Pages go out wrapped in newspaper, pressed inside canteen lids, tucked under stairwell tiles. One goes into the lining of a factory-issued coat, another inside a jar of mechanical grease. Your favorite finds its way onto the back of an official announcement, bold enough that someone will read it before tossing it. Each one begins the same: "We remember how," and each one ends differently. One ends with a recipe, one ends with a joke, one ends with a name. Yours. You didn't write that one, which means someone else did, and suddenly you are folklore. You wake up one morning to see your name scratched into a workbench. Not a signature, a tribute. A worker's hand has carved it beside a quote you know well. Even broken keys make sound. You didn't expect to be remembered. You only hoped to survive. But now your voice is multiplying. Anya visits you again. This time she's dressed differently, less official, more tired. She doesn't speak for a long time, just stands beside your machine and listens. Finally she says, "I used to write." You wait. "I stopped because no one read it." You nod. "I read," you say, and you mean it. Even if you never saw her words, you've read what silence did to her. She hands you a pencil, not a message, not a threat, just a pencil. Then she leaves, and somehow that's louder than anything else she's ever done. That evening the power goes out, the whole block. Generators hum weakly, but most machines fall silent, except yours. Manual, faithful. You light 3 candles. Your fingers find the keys by muscle memory. You don't need electricity to type truth. You only need breath and a reason. The next week you learn the name of someone who's been reading everything. Someone in Directorate 4, high up, dangerously high. They've been collecting your pages, cataloging them. One was even discussed in a meeting, with vodka, with laughter. You aren't sure if it's flattery or fatal, but it means your words are louder than you thought. You begin embedding micro-messages, half-lines, typographic codes. A slightly slanted E means trust the page. A double space after a period means false. It's childish. It's brilliant. It works. You see someone read one aloud, stumble, then smirk because they know, because you taught them, without ever meeting. Then one afternoon a poem appears, taped to your machine, typed, not yours, but in your voice. It ends. If the poet falls, we don't stop singing. We just sing louder. You keep it in your coat, not because you're vain, but because you don't want to die alone, and now you know you won't. You begin sending messages outside the factory, to a bookstore on Sadovaya Street, to a teacher in Yaroslavl who still mails things the old way, to a woman who works for the train line and hides verses in ticket stubs. The network grows, faster than you can manage. You create a code name, the ribbon. You don't tell anyone it's you, but everyone knows, or pretends not to. Same thing. One morning you find a child's drawing on your machine, a sketch of a typewriter, with wings. You don't know who left it, but it's the only time you've cried at work and no one asked why. They just let you. Later that week someone else is arrested. You don't know them, but the whispers say they had a page in their locker. Your page, your words. Your fault, no, but it feels like it. You consider stopping, again. But stopping has a cost too. It always does. Instead, you write something new, simple, bold. A banner made of stitched-together carbon sheets. You hang it in the underground hall where only a few will see, but they'll remember. Ink doesn't forget. Neither do we. Someone adds, neither does the machine. Someone else adds, neither does Mitya. You don't know who wrote that, but you hope it's true. You hope wherever he is, he's typing, or dreaming of it, or hearing the sound of clack-clack echoes from deep inside his skull. At night you dream of ribbons unfurling, not the decorative kind, the kind soaked in ink wound around spools pulled like threads from mouths that no longer tremble. You dream of keys pressed without fear, of stencils passed from hand to hand like heirlooms, of factories that hum with something more than orders, something alive, something brave. And when you wake, you type that dream, because you want others to see it too, because the machine is still working, and so are you. It begins with a sound, not the clack of typewriter keys, but something lower, heavier. A truck, more than one. You don't see them, but you feel them rumbling under the floor of the annex like distant thunder. The vibrations knock your coffee mug from the edge of your table. It shatters just like your rhythm. Everyone freezes, not out of surprise, out of understanding, because you've all known this day would come. You don't run, you type, not because you think it will help, but because you've trained your hands to respond to fear with motion. They move faster than your thoughts, faster than your breath. You punch out 4 lines onto a fresh sheet, the final verse of the piece you've been building for months. We are the rust in their gears, the grain in their silence, the smile in their shadow. We remember. You tear the page free and fold it once, twice again. Slide it into your coat. Leave the ribbon behind. Let them find it. Let them touch your voice. The trucks belong to ministry officials. Their shoes shine. Their coats match. They look like blueprints for intimidation. One speaks in a soft voice amplified by absolute power. He doesn't ask questions. He lists names. Yours is first. You raise your hand before he finishes it. Your co-workers look away, not because they're ashamed, because they're protecting you with their ignorance. They lead you out of Annex B, not with violence, with silence, worse than shouting. They put you in the back of a van with no windows, no questions, no answers. Just the smell of dust and fear. You trace letters on your knee with a finger, remember, a ritual, a promise, a curse maybe. You expect interrogation, a cell, something cinematic. What you get is an office, wood-paneled, overheated. A fan spins slowly overhead, but it moves no air. The man across from you is clean-shaven, wears wireframe glasses. Smiles like he once read a novel and didn't enjoy it. He doesn't threaten you. He compliments your grammar. I expected less finesse, he says. You don't reply. He places a folder in front of you, inside your pages, the pages of others, annotations. Your name circled in red ink. You stare at it, then at him. He waits for something, a plea maybe, a flinch. Instead you ask, what do you want me to sign? He smiles wider. No, you're not here to confess. You're here to choose. He offers you a deal. You stop. You write for them. Approved slogans, industrial poetry, lines about duty and progress and harvest. You get your old job back. You get heat in winter. Maybe even meat twice a week. It's not a bad deal, not objectively. But you stare at him for a long moment, and then you laugh, quietly. A breath at first, then fuller. Not disrespectful, just tired. You don't understand, you say. I already chose. The van doesn't take you back to Annex B. It doesn't take you to a camp either. It stops outside the city, an empty train yard. There's a car waiting. No guards. Just a man with a clipboard and your name misspelled. He gestures you in. You ask, where's this going? He shrugs. North. You ride in silence for hours. The train car is cold. The windows fog. You use your sleeve to clear a space and watch the frost form again, patterns like forgotten alphabets. You wonder how many others have ridden this same train, typed the same lines, refused the same offer. You hope it's a lot. You hope it's a movement. At some point you sleep. When you wake, you're somewhere with trees. Not the grim pine of official postcards. Real trees. Wild, stubborn. The kind that grow even when told not to. You step off the train. No one greets you. No one stops you. You follow the only path there is. And then somehow there's a cabin. Small, weather-worn, a chimney, a locked door. Beside it a crate. Inside a typewriter. Old, manual, heavy, familiar. Beneath it a note in an envelope. Handwritten, no signature. We thought you might still have something to say. You sit on the porch, the machine in your lap. You feed in a page. You type, I'm still here. You write more, not manifestos. Letters, to no one, to everyone. You send them in bottles. You tuck them in cracks of trees. You bury them under stones marked with poems. You don't know if anyone reads them. But one day, weeks later, a bottle returns. Inside a ribbon, ink-soaked, used, and a line, so are we. You laugh and you cry, and you type, because the machine still works, and the ghosts still hum, and the words, your words, have outlived the silence, just like you hoped they would. Time becomes something soft. You stop counting days. You stop checking the frost line on the windowsill or measuring soup rations like a prisoner's calendar. The seasons change, but here they do it politely without sirens or announcements, just snow that melts into moss, just a crow that lands closer each week. You name her Vera. She doesn't ask permission. Each morning you write, not for rebellion, not for recognition, just because you must, because the ribbon still turns, because your hands twitch if they're still for too long. You write about silence, about steam from tea kettles, about factory bells you still hear in dreams. You write about Mitya, his crooked smile, and the way he always dropped things before saying anything important. You write about Anya and her pencil, about the man who offered you a choice but didn't understand it wasn't his to give. Sometimes you write what you wish you'd said, sometimes what you still can't, but always you write. One day, a child appears, out of the woods. No warning. She doesn't speak, just sets a tin box on your doorstep and runs. You wait until dusk to open it. Inside a stack of pages. Not yours. Typed. Crude. Filled with errors and honesty and half-finished thoughts. At the bottom, a scrap of cloth. On it, a symbol you know. A tiny ribbon drawn by hand. You smile so wide your face aches, because it means you're not the only one, not even close. Weeks later, more arrive. Not people, not yet. Pages, bundles wrapped in twine, folded inside firewood deliveries, tucked into cracks of the outhouse wall, all of them carrying words, all of them carrying hope. Someone builds a shelf on your porch. No name, no thanks, just pine freshly cut. You fill it with ink, with letters, with memory, And still the ribbon turns. Sometimes you walk into the woods just to scream, not out of anger, out of joy, because you were supposed to vanish, you were supposed to stop, you were supposed to be a cautionary tale. And now you're a myth with a mailing address. Take that history. A man visits. One night just as the lantern burns low. He says he's from the South. He says he found your story on the back of a train manifest, typed in small, careful letters. He says he memorized it, recited it to himself during interrogation. It made him brave. You feed him soup. You let him sleep. He leaves the next morning without asking for anything, except to borrow a page. You give him 3. The cabin becomes a sanctuary, not hidden, known, respected. Visitors arrive. Never too many, never too loud. They leave offerings, scraps of verse, bundles of kindling. One day a new ribbon spool still warm from a pocket. You think this is what legacy looks like. Not parades, not statues, just hands continuing what yours began. And then there's a knock. You don't expect knocks. You expect letters slid under doors, whispers through the trees. But this is a knock, solid, confident, rhythmic, like someone who remembers what doors are for. You open it. She stands there, older, sharper, still holding that same pencil. Anya. She says nothing at first, just steps inside, looks around, nods once. Then I brought paper. You cry harder than you ever have, because survival is lonely, and memory is heavier when carried alone. Now you're not alone. You write together, you argue over commas, you burn drafts. You laugh like no one ever died for this, like no one ever disappeared. You tell her about Sub-Level 17. She tells you about the poems she wrote before the world asked her to forget. You both agree carbon paper is annoying. You both agree it's worth it. One night you sit outside. A fire crackles. Vera perches on the roof, judging your posture. The trees whisper in a language made of wind. You and Anya say nothing, because this moment is louder than words. And so the work continues, not as resistance, as rhythm, not as obligation, as offering. You type not to fight, but to remember, because memory is revolution, and you are still turning the ribbon. Now let the world slow down. Let the clack of the keys fade into soft echoes like rain on a distant tin roof. The kind of sound you can't trace, but that rocks you gently toward stillness. The typewriter rests now. The ribbon no longer spins, but that's okay. Its ink has already spilled across hundreds of hands, across hundreds of nights, across you. Let the cabin sink into quiet. Let the snow drift higher along the window panes, muffling every noise, every worry. Let the pages flutter just once, then settle. Outside the forest breathes. The trees lean inward. The air is cool and still like the moment before a page turns. And inside you are safe. You are still. Your words are still moving long after your fingers have stopped. And that's the secret, isn't it, that we don't write for applause or legacy. We write so someone else knows they're not alone. So someone else in some distant winter might find a page with a message like a hand on the shoulder. A message that says, "You matter, so rest now. Let your eyes drift closed. Let the hum of memory carry you. No more choices tonight, just quiet, just sleep. Just the sound of a ribbon still turning."